and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids. No one makes countries laugh to your face, fight and die. 'Cause God forgive. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slide, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See the shit, force a bear. Fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids. No one makes countries lie to your face, fight and die. 'Cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Game On here on UCY.TV. It is February the 4th, 2016, and we'll have to see what we're going to talk about. One thing I do want to talk about is, yes, hello everybody. Glad to see you here. I truly am. But anyways, I want to talk about a story that I put up on my blog last night maybe. And it's a really sad freaking story, but it really, it's the epitome of Agenda 21. It's exactly what's going on in your neighborhood, and it's bloody sad. One of the problems is the media. Okay, now, we have 2 OPP officers here charged with assault causing bodily harm. Hasn't been in the major newspaper. The police are supposed to forward what they do, who they've, the charges they've laid over the week or whatever, or daily. That is automatically sent to the media. This particular story, the police don't seem to want to send it to the media. And the reason I say that is because, like the police and the politicians and the teachers and the preachers and all the rest of it, I don't want to call it a cult, but they guard each other's interests because their interests are all the same. And it's really pathetic. So there's all kinds of things going on in your local community that you don't have any clue about. There's people being harassed that you haven't heard about. And the reason you haven't heard about it is because the media doesn't report it. Simple as that. And that's unfortunate. And that's why I keep saying we have to get these newspapers going. And we will. But anyways, this particular story took place, I think, in 2012. And it's from GA, I think is Georgia. Is it? But anyways, it's some of you may have heard of this story. I'd never heard of it before. I just ran across it last night when I was looking for something else, and it's worth talking about. The guy has around an acre of land, or he had around an acre of land. He had a private mortgage on his property. And I found it interesting because they went and actually bought the mortgage from the old lady that had the mortgage, an 80-some-year-old woman, and apparently paid about 40 cents on the dollar for the worth of the land. And then they proceeded to evict the guy who was on the land, and he was growing some chickens and whatnot, which was legal and lawful. And but they wanted the land. They wanted him off the land. They wanted to build a park or something. And so what they do, and I see it around here. I mean, that the municipality, or whatever you want to call it, the local town council, went in and negotiate the taking over the mortgage. Right here in my municipality, I have a gentleman who actually works for the municipality, and I've said this before, who has a legitimate business. It's a salvage business, basically. It's all licensed, all above board, and people drop off their appliances and whatnot, and he puts them on the trailers and he hauls them off to where the salvage yard is, wherever that is, and they pay him for the metal. And so it works well for everyone, but the municipality, I think, wants that part of they want that business going out to the dump. And so they want to put the hammer on this guy. The pressure ended up giving his father, who was retired, come up to help him with the business. And I know his father, and he's a pretty tough guy, but he ended up having a heart attack from all the stress and that. But this municipality actually phoned the owner of the business's financial institution and requested that they not renew his mortgage when it come due. Now, you don't read that in the paper, okay? You don't read about this authoritarian nonsense going on in your neighborhood. In your community. You don't hear it, because they don't print it. Okay, we hear all kinds of stories about what police have been doing to other people. Most of that never sees the light of day as far as the press is concerned, because they protect each other, because they're all working for the same deal, and that is one, the removal of your right of property. And anyways, I'm just going to run through a bit of this. So the chicken man, Andrew Wards, in his own words from 2012, and I stuck rest in peace under this. There's a video here, or it's a talk show, local talk show interview with the guy. But I put down here what's not sustainable. What's not sustainable is private property. And if you go to the 1976 UN Habitat Conference in Vancouver, you will find these quotes. Land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset. This goes to, if you want to say the Bundys or the Hammonds or untold numbers of people here in so-called Canada. And it goes on as all over North America, all over like Australia, New Zealand. This is going on constantly, and but people don't hear about it generally, okay? And because people don't say anything, and the media doesn't pick it up. So, in one sense, the gentleman got killed up in Oregon there. And they immediately try to turn these guys into terrorists. These guys, like them or not, what they're doing, at least they're bringing some of this land theft where people can at least see it. And otherwise you wouldn't hear about it. Anyways, land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Private land ownership is also a principal instrument in the accumulation and concentration of wealth, therefore contributes to social injustice. And that's from the 1976 UN Conference on Human Settlements. And this came 4 years after the Stockholm Conference on the what was it called, the human environment or whatever. These things are all staged events. It's all coming from the United Nations, Rockefeller's, the other foundations, and they had Morris Strong as their coordinator, mouthpiece, whatever. Anyways, this is a guy's story. It says this is one of the stories, those stories that often never makes it to the front page of any newspaper or website. It's a story about property rights and eminent domain. It's a story of one man who tried to fight back, and sadly, it's a story of a man who lost it all in the process. It's also a story that can happen to anyone who is reading this article, and that's absolutely correct. I cannot stress enough that you have to forget about Donald Trump. You have to forget about Justin Trudeau. You have to forget about whoever's running in that stupid election. You have to stop yammering on about Obama, okay, or your provincial premier, and throwing little hissy fit notes on whatever. The fact is that these people are not your target. You can't get to them. You cannot get to Obama. You cannot get to the Prime Minister of Canada. You cannot get to your provincial premier. God knows I call their offices constantly. So who can you get to? You could call your local MPP, but your local MPP took an oath to serve the Crown or stateside the state. Okay, so they're bound to the state. They serve the state. They do not serve anyone in the state. They serve the corporation known as the state. The state serves the federal government. The federal government is a signatory to the United Nations, making them a member state of the United Nations, of where they go when they sign treaties and shit to undermine your future. Simple as that. But they're using the program, global to local. So the global programs are being instituted. The federal government signed the treaties, and then you never hear about them much, and then that process gets dropped down to the local level, where your local no minds, called your local council, implement off of templates the agenda. So the only place you can get get at these people is at your local level, and that makes it very, very simple because you live there. You live there. You don't have to go to Washington. You don't have to go to Ottawa. You don't have to go anywhere because you're already there. But you need to attend the local council meetings, and you need to get in their face with hard questions. And you need to do it constantly. You're going in there once and doing it ain't going to cut it. They're just going to sit there and look at you like deer caught in the headlights. And you come in and did your rant and you left, and that's the end of it. You have got to grow a pushback group, and you have got to get these council meetings, as pathetic as they really truly are, but they're very important because this is where it's being implemented. Okay? This is where the Agenda 21 is implemented. And make no mistake about it. This migrant Muslim influx is all part of Agenda 21, and is it being implemented at your local level? And then it ends up in the school boards. And next thing you know, the kids are on their prayer mats in the school. And the kids are wearing scarves and that. I mean, come on. We're Europeans, for crying out loud. Better start acting like it. Better learn to stand up. But anyways, that's too deep right now. Worked all day and I'm tired. So let's just do this story. The story begins back in 2009 when Andrew Wards, otherwise known as the Roswell Chicken Man, began his fight to raise chickens on his property in February 2009. The city of Roswell, is it GA? That's Georgia, isn't it? I think. Roswell, anyways, started to cite Andrew Wards for raising livestock in his backyard. Wards, who had started raising chickens on his basically 1 acre homestead in 2005, decided to fight back. And guess what? He won. Brilliant. But that's when the trouble really started. You see, the story actually has very little to do with the chickens. Well, the city of Roswell and cities just like it across America would like people to believe it's a story about chickens. The real story is about the rights of property owners. When taking a look at a map that was published back in 2003, a part of Roswell's 2030 Comprehensive Plan, that's Agenda 21, moved up to 2030, but it's still the plan for the 21st century. It's just the next stage of it. So when taking a look at a map that was published back in 2003 as part of Roswell's 2030 Comprehensive Plan for city improvements, one thing becomes painfully obvious. The city had already planned to take Ward's property. The map showed that the city had major plans for his property. In fact, his property sat right in the middle of a planned city park. His property was being targeted for city improvements. And this fight had nothing whatsoever to do with chickens. The chickens were really just the catalyst for the city to unlawfully seize his land. And this is not an isolated story, ladies and gentlemen. It's not isolated by any means, but it is a good story because it has a lot of what happened and how this actually ended. After initially winning his fight in municipal court, the city of Roswell made Ward's life a living hell. The harassment campaign against Andrew Ward on December 14, 2009, the city council approved a new ordinance banning roosters and using lot size to limit how many chickens a resident could keep. Ward's claimed that the harassment started immediately after the meeting when Roswell police ticketed him for no insurance and a number of other moving violations. In September of 2010, Roswell prosecuted Ward's under the new ordinance, claiming he had too many birds for a lot his size. The judge found him not guilty since he had the chickens before the ordinance became law, so the grandfather clause. And the city knew it. This is about harassment, and I can tell you about harassment because for the last, many years now, I have suffered the same kind of nonsense, and it's ridiculous, and it takes a pretty thick skin to put up with it. But I know what they're doing, right? In 2010, he was convicted of grading sediment on his land without a permit and having inoperable vehicles in his yard. He was sentenced to community service. Now, that grading sediment on his land, what he was doing was he was basically banking land up around his house because he was in a 100-year floodplain. But it wasn't the 100-year flood. They were building subdivisions, and they were grading it in such a fashion that they flooded these other properties that they wanted, right? So he's, got a bobcat, and he's trying to keep the water away from his house and his outbuildings or whatever. So he was just trying to protect himself from what the city had been doing. They caused the problem. He was trying to fix it, but he got busted. In November 2010, code enforcement served Ward with a nuisance citation. After winning twice in court against the city, the county then got involved and actually cited him for not properly. Are you ready for this one? Okay, so they charged him, twice? He beat him. Then they get the county involved in it, and the county got involved and actually cited him for, this is a big offense. I didn't know it was an offense, but apparently it is an offense, for not properly stacking his firewood. That's right. He apparently didn't stack his firewood right, so hang the man. In 2011, the 84-year-old woman who held Mr. Ward's mortgage was harassed by the city into selling Ward's mortgage for 40 cents on the dollar. The city then began the foreclosure process. Well, in the process of trying to save his home, Andrew Ward was arrested by Roswell police on the day that he was to bring paperwork that would have delayed his bankruptcy and the foreclosure on his home. Ward was jailed for violating his probation after the city claimed he only served 22 that he only served 122 of the 150 hours of community service that had been ordered. He had been ordered to serve. He then served 99 days in jail. This is your so-called government, people. This is your so-called local government. All right? And that 2030 comprehensive plan came straight out of the United Nations. And your federal government, your prime ministers and Bush signed America on to Agenda 21, conservative. I hear all this nonsense. These damn Democrats, these damn liberals. Well, both in the United States, it was Bush that signed your country onto Agenda 21, and up here in Canada, it was the conservative Prime Minister Brian Mulroney who signed us on to Agenda 21 and then appointed Maurice Strong to the Privy Council. Okay? So this is how it works, and it works at the local level. After his release, he placed a sign on his property that read, "Trespassers will be construed as a bodily threat." And then he waited for the authorities to arrive to remove him. On Monday at 10:45 a.m., marshals arrived at the home. After a 2-hour standoff, wards advised the marshal that they needed to immediately leave the property. That's when the explosion happened. And that was the end of the Chicken Man. After years of battling for his right to keep his land, wards had finally had enough. And he took his own life. On a website dedicated to Andrew Wards, one of his friends wrote, "We all lost a little something today. Andrew was a man of faith with a strong love of God. He was a staunch constitutionalist with a passion for our freedoms and liberties. You pushed Mr. Wards to this point. You marched around Roswell bashing Andrew, annihilating his character, making him out as marking him as a crazy, and filing lawsuits whenever you could, bankrupting him and denying him his rights given to property owners in the United States. Andrew fought the good fight, not just for himself, but for others, because he knew it could happen to anyone, and it is. Eminent domain is being abused all over our country. Just look it up. Communities are plagued with repeated abuses of the use of eminent domain. It's tragic, and your neighborhood could be next. Andrew fought to his last breath for himself, for me, for you. In his mind, he went on his terms right out of Atlas Shrugged. Andrew is at peace now, but it's not over. Okay, the sad truth about this story is it's not an isolated incident. When any government, talking city or county, finds financial motivations and they're able to initiate those directives at gunpoint of its local laws enforcement, it's important to keep powers in check so that they cannot be abused. Well, here in my neck of the woods, the amount of abuse is craziness. You know, for 20-some years now, Michael Schmidt, who has never harmed a soul, has been dragged in and out of courts, harassed, harangued, arrested, spied upon, and so on and so forth. People are being picked off through phony tax claims. I mean, on my own mortgage, I had 2 phony tax claims from the Canadian Revenue Agency. Didn't know about them. But there's 2 of them there. Now we've got it sorted out now, so they come to the understanding that I really don't owe them any money, and they accept that, and we just have to file some paperwork now and have them removed. But a lot of people who don't understand how most of this nonsense works, they can be intimidated when somebody like, the Federal Revenue Agents, whatever you call them, the IRS, I guess, in the United States, and the CRA up here, come in with their goons or put liens on your properties and that, the average person can get pretty intimidated pretty quick. if they don't get it. And that's what happens. Anyways, from the federal government seizing property because of environmental regulations to local municipalities who use code enforcement agents, codes, to intimidate people into giving up their land. We have a huge problem in this country. Our property rights are being shredded before our eyes, and it's only a matter of time before this story becomes an everyday occurrence. And the causes need to be addressed. Remember, in the U.S., every town, every county, every state makes many of its own laws, so circumstances vary from place to place. It's important to get plugged into where you live and be sure that your local government are above reproach with their handling of the citizens they intend to serve. The only problem is that you didn't vote them to serve you. Okay, they serve ultimately the agenda of the United Nations. Ultimately, that's who they serve. They take an oath here in Canada to serve the Queen, which is the head of state, and down in the States you take an oath to serve the state, which is nothing more than a corporation. Anyways, regardless of where you live, UN Agenda 2020 is being implemented by your local council without your knowledge. Time to stand, say no, and mean it. I can't stress it enough, people. I mean, I sound like a broken record sometimes, I think, but you don't need to worry about Obama. You don't need to worry about Trudeau up here, okay, or a prime minister or president anywhere. They are all doing the bidding of the United Nations, which is this huge spider's web, right? I'm sure that's why they call it the web here on the internet, because it's an integral part of this lockdown on us. But they are all doing the bidding of the UN. And the UN is the WHO, which springs this nonsensical pharmaceutical ever-increasing number of vaccines they're pumping into little kids. The FAO is the Food and Agricultural Organization, the IMF, the World Bank, and it goes on and on and on and on. And the idea is to control all resources on the planet. And that's why they say that private property is a form of social injustice. Okay, because if you have property and I don't, well, you can gain from it and I can't, and therefore you have a better shot at lifting yourself up from whatever poverty or middle class or whatever, and the other person doesn't. So therefore, in order to make sure that everything is socially just, we must get rid of the idea of private property. Now, they say it has to be public property. The only problem with public is public actually means private. Public actually is anything owned by the government. So your property will fall into their hands there, and then it goes over to, and it goes into the global trust. And then it gets really bad because the Universal Human Rights Code states you have the right to adequate this, that, and the other thing, water, housing, foods, education, all this kind of stuff, healthcare. And the only problem is that this unelected body that you can't get at is the one that decides what is adequate water, and the UN documents state that they would like to see you use 75% less water. They don't want you using electricity. And they're using the same template for both water and electricity. They call it conservation, but it's not conservation. It's forced non-use using ever-increasing or rising price points, okay, so that you can't afford to use electricity or water. And then eventually they will give you a card which will, or an allowance, a monthly allowance, and this is the same thing as this guaranteed basic income. It's all part and parcel of the thing, and that you will get X amount of quarts or gallons of water or liters of water per month, and they're never extendable. So if you use up your allotment early, well, then you're screwed. And if you don't use it, you can't save it to the next month. And this is what this is all about. But I just found this story so sad, so bloody sickening. This is what they do. They target people, their own people. I mean, these are your people that are being targeted, and you could be next on the hit list. So we have to. I just keep saying, shine the light, right? Get to them council meetings and shine the light on them. But you can't just go shine the light on them once. You got to keep it up. You got to make it so uncomfortable for them, they don't want to come into your light anymore, right? They don't even want to show up at the council meeting anymore. All city managers, and up here we call them CAOs, are trained on the implementation of Agenda 21. So you can't say, I mean, right here we have comprehensive, the 2030 comprehensive plan. That's straight out of the United Nations. It's about driving people off the land and into high density areas where you're basically screwed. Instead of you wandering around, you're going to be stuck in this closed place, and it ain't going to be good. I mean, it just is so it's so 1984. Like he says, well, let's just get out of here, says his girlfriend to Winston. And Winston looks at her and goes, where will we go? And she goes, anywhere. Says, well, we got a problem with that, don't we? Because everywhere is the same. And that's what they're striving for, okay? It's the total lockdown. Oh, somebody already got that in there. Thank you very much. I was just going to put that in there as well. But I much Jane, I much appreciate that. You obviously know about the story, or maybe you just dug it out. But there's the one thing you need to do on these either one of these links is to watch or listen to the audio that's included. I imagine it's in the same thing as the one Jane put in. But you really got to listen to the audio. I mean, this is freaking sad. It's really, really sad, and it shouldn't happen anywhere. And when our so-called elected officials will play a dirty game like this, and the better they get at it, the dirtier they get. Now, we have all this international law that people don't know about, international environmental law. And they are writing more of these codes and regulations by the day. And they're going to tie you down. You won't be able to do nothing on your property. So you're going to be screwed that way. So I thought that was a pretty important. It just seemed to have everything in it that would hopefully get. Well, I want to talk. Logan Hawk put something in here about land ownership, and I don't want to get him mad at me because he was tearing a strip off me. I think is this who was chewing on me about Muslims last whenever. But I do have an explanation because, you see, when I ask the finance minister's office or the premier's office or the federal government or the real estate people, and it's a very simple question: who owns the land? And I'm going to give you an example here. I think, we've got time. I'm going to give you an example. It took me a long time to get people to understand that legal and law are not the same thing, okay? They have nothing whatsoever in common. Nothing, okay? Absolutely nothing. But they interchange these words, right? So that you believe that legal and law mean the same thing, when they don't. Have nothing to do with one another. So when I'm asking I asked the Treasury here in the municipality, who owns the land? that this house is sitting on. She writes me back and says, well, you own the property. I said, I didn't ask you about the property. I asked you about the land. So I phoned up last Friday, I guess, to the municipality, and got the other lady at the Treasury. And she got all pissy about it and said that she wasn't prepared to answer the question. This is how difficult this question is. Now, you wouldn't think it's difficult. Hello, Treasury? Yeah, it's Ron. Oh, hey, Ron, how's it going? Yeah, can you do me a favor? What? Can you tell me who owns the land my house is sitting on? Well, not really. Well, I'd really like to know, because I thought I bought a house on a piece of land, but I've come to learn I didn't buy that. I bought actually a piece of paper called an abstract concept, which gives me a bundle of rights. It was really nothing more than a lease to the land. So who owns the land that I got the lease from? And she got all weirded out and didn't want to answer, and eventually just hung up. So then I got back to the head of Treasury, and I wrote again, and she came back with this nonsensical stuff about property. So I wrote her back, and I said, look, I'm not asking you for a definition. I don't want to know who owns this real property. Okay? I don't want to know who owns the real estate. Okay? And this is the kicker, real property, real estate. The word real to most people means real. Something that you can touch, when in fact it's a fiction. So they take a real word and a word that you think it means what it means, and then they give it a different meaning, just like they do with land. They say you own the land, right? They say that you own the land. Well, you don't own the land. Well, who the hell owns the land? How is this such a freaking difficult question? So I was rooting around. I wasn't even looking for this. I was looking, again, for something else. This is research, right? I'm looking for something, and something will catch my eye, and I got to go follow it through. And where is that? Actually, I had to put in there, I said, oh, here it is. I actually had to send this to the Treasury. I said, look, I want to know who owns the land / terra firma. I mean, you can't confuse that, okay? And guess what? I haven't had anybody respond back to me. I wonder why. Because it's all a great big Alice in Wonderland fantasy. Anyway, so I'm rooting around, and I come across this thing called BC Assessment, right? So it's British Columbia Assessment page. And I don't know anything, because I've been telling people, in the ministries, that I got hosed here. I'm still in the feudal system. And it's worse than the feudal system, because in the feudal system, the king or whoever, the land was grants. You remember, people know about land grants, right? And he would grant a chunk of land, and you paid some taxes on it, but you didn't pay for it. Okay, you had the use of it. In other words, you had a bundle of rights, like the same thing you do today with a fee simple. The only difference then was your total cost would be whatever the tax would be. Okay, so basically your today, where I'm living, my cost to live here should be my taxes, the taxes on the land, which would be around $3,000 a year. Not the other part, the 25 years of mortgage payments and insurances and all the rest of the nonsense. So anyways, this really spelled it out. And I actually called these people, and they said, oh, I don't think I'm qualified to discuss this. Well, it's on your site. So she gave me another outfit that, because I said, it says right here on your site, for more information, call here. Well, yeah, I don't know why that's there, because they just don't want to talk about it. and we got to get to it. So basically, this is it. This I always like it when it's a government site that tells you. So it says about Crown land leases, licenses, and permits. Excuse me. What is Crown land or Crown land tenure? Okay. Crown land is land, including land covered by water, example, rivers, lakes, oceans, seabed, and ocean seabed. That is owned by the provincial or federal government. Excuse me. A crown land tenure is an agreement between an individual or company and the provincial or federal government, which provides the individual or company with an interest in the land. Tenures are granted for specific purposes and periods of time. So this is where we go to the difference between this was what land is at the top. Now we have assessment of Crown land property. When Crown land is occupied by someone other than the Crown, whether leased or not, and this will be the same for the state or the federal, but the federal, this is what I like about what's going on up in Oregon. I've seen a couple videos from normally women. Guys, we really got to get our act together. But stating that the federal government only has access and control over 10 square miles. And what the hell are they doing out here in rural Oregon? A good question. But anyways, assessment of Crown land property. When Crown land is occupied by someone other than the Crown, whether leased or not, it becomes subject to taxation. It is taxably occupied. Property assessments of Crown land are based on the market value of the fee simple interest in the land. That's what we buy. We buy an interest in the land called a fee simple, which in fact is a lease. Okay? It's a lease. You know it's a lease because they still have eminent domain. They can move you off it, right? They can take it for your taxes. So it's a lease. Now it's a lease you can resell, but it's still nothing more than a lease. Property assessments of Crown land are based on the market value of the fee simple interest in the land as if it was owned outright, by the occupier. Even if the lease costs less than the purchase price, the land is valued as if it was owned outright. But it's not owned outright. It is always owned by the Crown or the state. They never relinquish absolute ownership of it. Okay, so when you see a house for sale, it doesn't say lease for sale. It doesn't say abstract concept for sale. Right? They allow you to think that. Most people, even the real estate board agrees with me. Most people, the vast majority of people, probably 99% of the people, when they walk and they go and say, "Oh, house for sale, let's go look at it," and they go through it and they see that it's all real to them. They touch things, they walk on the ground. It's all real to them, and nobody tells them that it's not theirs. Okay. It belongs to the state. It belongs to the government. And the government instituted the banks. The government's allowed the lawyers and the banks to basically control them because they go get them the money to operate. Everybody's padding their pockets off of you, which is absolutely ridiculous. Let's see. When completing the assessment, the assessor considers any restriction the Crown places on the use of land. However, neither the duration nor the value of the lease or other tenure it can be considered. If the Crown tenure is granted for farm use, the assessment is based on a special schedule of rates that considers the value of the land as farm without regard to its value for other purposes. And I guess that would be mining and oil and gas and whatnot. I'm helping my friend renovate his house or put an apartment in the basement. And we were having lunch or something today, and we have a farmer out here who's they're really crawling up, and we're going to see what we can do to help that guy out. But the guy's 70 years old. Leave him alone, for crying out loud. Leave him alone. He just suffered. He just went through cancer treatments and this and that, and good for him. He was taking cancer treatments and that, and it wasn't sure what was going to happen. It wasn't getting better, so they went and got some of that good old Rick Simpson oil. It's not trademarked, of course, but oil, and his cancer has disappeared. So that one risk to his life has disappeared, and another one has appeared in the form of the CRA and the municipal government, because they want the land. Any excuse they can do to get you off of this, they will happily go after it. These guys are criminals. The ladies and the men who sit on town councils are international criminals, because they are doing the bidding without question. They are not representing you. They represent the international crime syndicate created by the lawyers and the bankers and the kings and all these kind of clowns. So when we get down, let me see here. But what this boils down to is that, let me see. When a crown tenure is acquired by way of an assignment, example of a lease or license, the new occupier assumes liability for all unpaid property taxes. Before agreeing to an assignment, it is important to inquire about the status of the property tax account by contacting the local municipal office or the surveyor of taxes. When a crown tenure is canceled, a new tenure for the same property is issued. Any unpaid taxes for the previous tenure remain the responsibility of the previous occupier. And then it says at the bottom here, for more information about crown lands or crown land taxation, contact the property taxation branch, surveyor of taxes, Ministry of Finance, provincial government, Victoria, BC. And that's who I called. And I just wanted to discuss some stuff that was on this page, and they really didn't want to discuss it. But the fact of the matter is, property is not land, and you didn't buy any land. You don't own any land. You will never own any land. It's an impossibility for you to own land because the corporate entity owns the land. And that being your so-called government owns the land. So you cannot own land. But they are taking away your bundle of rights to the land, so that all lands are held in public. In other words, all lands, now that you've improved the lands with your labor, physical and monetary labor, you have inputted all this improvement into it, and they want to take it back and turn you into a rent slave, maybe in the very building that you built, or the very land that your forefathers cleared. And that's not good, right? And we can't put up with that either. So, there's a whole lot going on, but the thing is, it's all going on at your local level. That's the kicker. That's the kicker. It's going on at your local level. So when I was talking to Paul today at lunch or whatever, I was talking about, some stuff about the farms and that. And I said, it really kills me because, when you say farmers, a farmer, we have people up here, and I'm sure it's the same in the States. I'm sure they have the same kind of programs, farmers feed cities, right, and stuff like that. But what's the actual meaning of farmer, right? When I told Paul today, he said, that can't be right. And I said, well, it is, we were taught nothing in school. And I'm actually going to go after the school board, and I'm going to send them a letter of intent to sue over the matter, And that matter is that I was abused my entire every moment I was at the public school, I was being mentally abused because you put me in there and told me that I was being taught things that I needed to know. I was taught nothing I needed to know. They kept us there to train us to be a useful product of the state for the benefit of the state. And that's abuse. They kidnapped me, all the rest of the crap. I want to go after them, see if we can't get it in the paper. Farmer, okay? Farmer. What is a farmer? Well, a guy that grows food. No. One who collects taxes. Okay? They farm taxes. And that's what they do, okay? Because if you go back to whenever, and the king claimed all of this land, then he would go to one of his favorite barons or whatever they were, and say, I need to, raise some money in that, and I can't do this myself. So I will give you, because you're my favorite, I will give you this huge chunk of land, say a state or a province. And I need you to go collect the taxes. Now, the deal was, it's a commercial interest, okay? It's a commercial deal. So he signs a deal with the king to bring X amount of taxes in to the king, but he can't do it all himself either. So he cuts it up into smaller chunks and cuts deals. It's like subcontracting, okay? He cuts it off to his lower friends, whatever they called them, and so they make an agreement that they will be paid X amount. Or the deal is you give me X amount, and whatever you collect above it, you keep. Okay. So now you got all these basically criminals running around as tax collectors, and apparently they got pretty brutal, which is no different than today, extracting the labor from the people. So then it goes from the counties down to the local municipalities, towns, villages, townships, or whatever. So it's just subcontracted down. But a farmer is a tax collector. And we were looking in this is in etymology. We were looking in he had it in Webster's too, and they are like bailiffs, tax collectors, and a few other terms, which basically are the same thing. So we are tenants. Living on corporate-owned land, and we are hiring corporate lawyers to do the paperwork. The corporate lawyers are the ones that wrote the legalese into the acts and that to allow the bankers to perform the way they do, okay? And we are tenants upon the land. And a tenant is a person who holds land by title or by lease. Okay, which is the same damn thing. You hold title to or lease, but you only got the use of it. You don't own it. So you're a tenant on the land, which is exactly the feudal system that was and is. The only difference between the feudal system then and now is you didn't have to pay a 25 or 30-year mortgage upon that. And whenever they want to kick you out, okay, they will have a market crash, an unemployment rise, where people are vulnerable. At which point they normally jam the interest rate up, and once they have the population sufficiently in debt, then they will crack up the interest rates, and then they will come and collect. Okay. These are the people that say they're your representatives. My attitude is that if you're born in these lands, okay, if you're born here, see, the problem is we don't have any attachment to the land. Okay, we're just tenants on the land. We don't have any attachment to the land. My attitude, make me prime minister, and everyone is deeded a chunk of land. Okay, every child is deeded a piece of land, and when that child turns 18, that child takes possession of that piece of land. Okay, not a bundle of rights to the piece of land, but the land itself. And see, now you got roots to the land. Okay, and you are much more apt to defend your position when you're in that position, as it should be. How are you going to build a strong national group of people, a strong society? Well, if they're rooted to the land, then you have people who will defend, okay, and will not let what we see coming onto our lands now come onto our lands. But you see, we feel helpless, so this is pitiful what they're doing. Yeah, it's damn pitiful what they're doing. Okay, it's damn pitiful. Now, are we going to have a lot of beheadings and stuff over here? I don't know. I doubt it, really. They're going to have incidents of it. But the real deal here is to get them into your governments. Okay, they want Sharia law. Okay, on our lands. Now, how do you get that? You get their people into government positions. Okay, and before you know it, you have no say whatsoever. You really don't have any say anyways, but and never did. But this is the plan. So we must take this opportunity to get to work at the local level. Simple as that. And if you go about it planning on having fun, then you can have fun at it, okay? And it gives you an opportunity to do some useful, really useful research, okay? Bondage, condition of a serf or a slave, and that's what we are. A serf, a tenant farmer, okay? And we are in bondage. And we have to accept that, and then we have to break the chains of bondage, and then and only then can we move forward. Till then, we're just going to be, spinning our wheels in this mud pit that they call democracy. We got to get this fixed up, and we will. But we're going to have fun doing it. Okay, I don't want people being feared. I saw a thing from down at Auckland, New Zealand, on the TTP or the TPP, and people are, in the streets. They're ticked off, but then they were in the streets for, GATT. They were in the streets, the free trade agreement, any free trade agreement, WTO. We always have these big demonstrations, but they get implemented, and then people go quiet until the next one comes along, and then they get all jacked up, and then they go quiet. And the powers that be know, they understand how things work. They understand the psychology. They understand how to move people when they want to move them and stop them when they want to stop them, how to redirect them, how to smoke and mirror them. I love this station here because I know the listeners, for the most part here, get it. And I know they do research. And so we just got to keep building on it, all right? And we will push these idiots back. Now, I don't have time. No, I'm not going to hit music right now. I'm going to look up a different word that we looked up today, which really basically freaked me out, the meaning on that one, which I'd never looked up for. And I think Hal would really get interested in this one. Anyways, that's the time. I enjoy this. Tired tonight, but I enjoy it. And I guess what day is it? Thursday? So I guess Saturday night I'm going to be back on Revolution Radio. Broadcast over here at WCY, and then I'll be back here at noon. So everybody, have a great night. Have a great tomorrow. And if you're not doing nothing 10 o'clock Saturday night, slide on over to Revolution Radio or listen to us right here on WCY, and we'll see what comes